The New York Rangers scored a dramatic overtime win over the Florida Panthers to take back home ice advantage in their conference final series. John Chik of Locked On New York Rangers is here to talk about that and what it'll take for the Rangers to win it all. All that and more on today's Locked On NHL podcast.
You're Locked On NHL, your daily podcast on the National Hockey League. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Gil Martin here. Welcome, everybody, to the Monday edition of the Locked On NHL podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I want to thank everyone who makes Locked On NHL your first listen every day. Don't forget to subscribe on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts so you can get new episodes as soon as they drop. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 with any winning $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. It is my pleasure to welcome back to the show the host of Locked On New York Rangers, John Chik. And John, has your blood pressure gone down since this dramatic Game 3 overtime win by the Rangers?
I don't think it has, Gil. That's just crazy stuff. You know, we were talking right before we hit record. Playoff overtime hockey, there's really nothing quite like it. And, I'm just glad the Rangers were able to dig deep and find a way, because in the third period, it obviously wasn't looking good, giving up the 2 goals. But, Rangers were really back on their heels in the final 5 minutes there. Obviously the game's tied at that point, and Panthers are pressing and looking like they might get the go-ahead goal there. And my thought as a Ranger fan was, man, just get this game to overtime. Like, it felt like it wasn't going to happen for the Rangers at the end of regulation in terms of scoring a goal. You never know for sure, but they were really back on their heels there. And my mindset is, well, we're 3-0 in overtime. And, if we can at least escape the third period here, at least they have a chance to go into the locker room, regroup, say what needs to be said, eat an orange or two, whatever you got to do there, and come back ready to go. And honestly, even in the overtime, I felt like the Panthers probably had the better of play. But you also know, as a hockey fan, it just takes one chance, and that's what they got. And what a heck of a job by all the guys on the ice to, fight for the possession on the overtime winner, and then Lindgren on the shot. And Wennberg is your unlikely hero, but we'll certainly take it.
Yeah, talk to me about Wennberg coming up big the way he did.
Yeah, I mean, it's huge. And I got to give a shout out. I'm going to do a live episode a little bit later, and somebody in the chat the other day was saying that Wennberg is going to have his moment, and I'm going to have that person's name ready to go for my episode a little bit later. But, Wennberg, they bring him over at the deadline, and it's one of those things. It's like, okay, it's a nice pickup. Certainly somebody that's a defensive specialist first. That was only his second goal as a member of the Rangers. But, I mean, that's the beauty of this sport. A lot of other sports, you're looking at, I mean, there can be an unlikely hero, of course. But, basketball, you're going to get the ball to your best player. And obviously football, the quarterback has a lot to say. And baseball pitching is obviously huge. But hockey, man, you pretty much have to roll everybody out there just about. And it could be anybody on any given night. And Alex Wennberg, I mean, first of all, winning the faceoff. And he got some great help on that play from Kakko and Roslovic. All those guys were fighting their tails off to get possession of the puck for the Rangers. And that was huge. They eventually work it back to Lindgren. And great job on Wennberg, getting to the front of the net and redirecting the puck there, getting to where he needed to be. And again, unlikely hero, but that's one of the coolest things about playoff hockey is it can be anybody on any given night.
Talk to me about the resilience of this team, because to give up a 2-goal lead in the third period, holding on and then bouncing back to win it in overtime, what does that say about the emotional makeup of this Rangers team?
I think it says a lot. And really, that's what I've been seeing pretty much all year. I mean, there's nights where, they don't have it just like any other team in hockey. But when you watch this team over the course of the season, anytime there's some adversity or anytime they're coming off of a rough performance or whatever it might be, it feels like they find a way to be at their best. And obviously in the third period, they were not at their best, although I would argue that was the Panthers playing excellent hockey, more so than anything the Rangers were doing wrong. But they hung in there, and that's kind of been a trademark of this team. They don't get too high. They don't get too low. It's all about the next shift. And I thought that was a great move by Peter Laviolette, taking that time out in the third period there about midway through after a couple of goals have been given up and just getting them back into it. They got a mini push after that happened, and then it was all Florida for the rest of the third. But overall, again, I love this team's makeup. And could they have pulled that off 2 years ago? I mean, possibly, giving up the 2-goal lead and still winning it in overtime. But this year's team, everybody's 2 years older, 2 years more mature. And you saw a lot of a good example of that today.
Talk to me about Igor Shesterkin. Yeah, he gave up the 2 goals in the third period, but when your team is outshot 37-23 and they still win, the goalie had to do something right.
Yeah, no, Igor's been awesome, and I think today is a great example of why you can't always just look at the box score. I mean, there were a couple of absolute snipes by the Panthers, like that shot by Forsling that tied it. I'm not sure there's a goalie on this planet that's stopping that shot. And one of the power play goals he gave up earlier, that deflected off of, I think it was Miller. I think it went off of Miller into the net, and same thing. There's not much you can do there. But regardless of how the game's going or what the score is or where we are in the series, or whatever it might be, I'll always bet on Igor Shesterkin to make big saves when they count. And the last 5 minutes of that third period, man, he was amazing. He is the only reason why the Panthers did not get the go-ahead goal late there in the third. A couple saves in overtime too, and he's the man. What else can you say? It's Igor Shesterkin, and I'm glad he's on our team.
Give me an unsung hero so far in this series for the Rangers.
That's a great question. I'm going to go ahead and say Ryan Lindgren. Now, he did have the primary assist at the end of the game there, so he stands out in that way. But, man, this guy he has his hard hat on every single night, and he just goes out there and goes to work. I mean, he's bleeding all over the ice, and I thought he was big time in this game today. I thought Keandre Miller and Jacob Trouba kind of had a rough afternoon. They were on the ice for a couple of goals against, and Trouba's taken 3 penalties, and that's a whole other controversy in and of itself. The elbow there. But Ryan Lindgren stepped up, and he's out there with Adam Fox, and Fox is playing injured. It's pretty obvious that he is, and Lindgren is kind of I think picking up the slack there as well. Fox is doing the best he can, but again, this is hard-nosed, gritty hockey between these two teams. I mean, they are hitting each other. It's physical, it's nasty, and Ryan Lindgren's right at home in an environment like that. So I'm going to go with Ryan Lindgren for the unsung hero so far.
What does it take? I mean, these two teams seem so evenly matched. We've had 3 really good games so far. What's it going to take for the New York Rangers to emerge victorious in this hard-fought series?
Yeah, I think you're just going to have to, first of all, continue to play with desperation. Something I said against the Canes in the Canes series, once it went 3-2 and everybody's panicking and, oh my God, they're going to blow the 3-0 lead. I said for game 6, man, treat this like you are down 3 games to 2, not like you're up. Act like you've got no room for margin. I think the same kind of desperation, urgency is going to be needed against this Panther team because, Ranger fans are feeling good right now, and they should. But, man, we are not done with this team by a long shot. I mean, there's a long way to go here. And obviously they got game 4 in their barn. I think that's first and foremost, though. They have to match and potentially even eclipse the kind of desperation the Panthers are going to be playing with in the next one. And I think also, the Rangers star players have to step up a little bit. It's been awesome to see Barclay Goodrow go off these last couple of games and score all these big goals, and Lafreniere, huge game today. But, sooner or later, the brand names, Mika and Kreider and Panarin and, Fox is playing injured, but a little more from him would be nice too. Sooner or later, those guys are going to have to step up. And I don't think it's a lack of effort or anything like that. You see people say things like that. I think they're just going up against a great team. And in the case of Mika and Kreider, they're matched up against the Barkov line pretty often, and not easy to do a lot of damage against them. But one way or another, I do think, those guys are going to have to, find the score sheet a couple of times. And I'll also throw the power play out there too, because, that's obviously been a strength of the Rangers this season. I think at this point, they're down to like 1 for their last 23 or 24 on the power play or something like that. And I mean, props to the Panthers and even the Canes before them. They've done a great job on the kill, but it's good they can win without it, but that's been such a weapon for them. You'd love to be able to see them get that going again at some point too.
What worries you the most about facing the Panthers for the rest of this series?
I would say just that team's ability to grind. I mean, that team is built and they play a style that is just like tailor-made for playoff hockey. I think that's why, a lot of people were picking them to win the cup this year. That's why going into the playoffs, everybody's saying that the Panthers are going to be a really tough out. And if I'm not mistaken, they were the betting favorites against the Rangers in this Eastern Conference final here. So, so deep, so strong, just a big team, a tough physical team. And, I think they're a mentally tough team too. We saw that last year against the Bruins. Obviously, the Bruins had that historic regular season, and they go up 3-1, and there's overtime games and everything, and the Panthers find a way to rally and come back, and they take it all the way to the finals. So that's a team that is not going to go away, and is going to grind. And like I said, I think they're built for playoff hockey, but I think the Rangers are too, and I don't think they get enough credit for that.
All right, John, why don't you tell our viewers and our listeners where they can find the podcast and where they can find you on social media?
Yeah, wherever you're listening to this or watching this, you can find Locked On New York Rangers as well. We are on YouTube. And if you want to find me on social media, I'm on Twitter at JChik17. Go ahead, give me a follow, and we'll talk some Ranger hockey and have some fun.
All right, John, thanks so much. Always a pleasure.
Thanks, Gil. Appreciate it.
Today's episode is brought to you by your friends at FanDuel. It's winner take all time in the NBA and NHL. FanDuel's giving you a shot to bring home a big win of your own. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 to bet on spreads, money lines, player props, and more. Hockey fans, use your knowledge of the NHL on FanDuel. You can check out all the odds on who's going to win any one game in the playoffs. Maybe you want to bet on which team wins the Eastern or Western Conference Final, or which team is going to win the Stanley Cup, or how about betting on the Conn Smythe Trophy as the playoff MVP? You can check out all the latest odds at FanDuel. All you have to do is visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make every playoff shot count. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon. FanDuel.com/lockedon. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook.